Hey everybody, it's Angelo Caruso from the Present Like a Pro group on Facebook, also the YouTube channel. Subscribe to see new videos as they are posted. I want to share a quick tip for what I call instant inspiration. A lot of people who are putting speeches and presentations together, they've got that writer's block the night before because they need content. They're staring at the white page and they can't find inspiration, which is important because the whole reason you're speaking is to inspire other people, and if you can't find inspiration, there is a major hiccup. So I have a technique that I use that I wanted to share with you, and it's predicated on a very simple rule. And here's the rule: that if you're getting ready to speak to someone, you must find a way to get them to think or feel differently than they do now. Think or feel differently than they do right now. Now, there are a number of ways to get this done, but let's just talk about the two of them for now. And the first one is that if you've had something extraordinary happen to you in your life, like if you were raised by a homeless person, or you were raised with a disability, or you survived the fire, then you've got an extraordinary story to tell. But by definition, you probably don't have an extraordinary situation because they're rare. They're far and few between. Most of us come from ordinary upbringings. That's by definition how it works. And since I didn't come up with extraordinary stuff happening to me, I learned to draw from ordinary situations, right? So I use ordinary situations to extrapolate some sort of extraordinary narrative, or what we call in the business an extraordinary signature story, right? And I'll give you an example of this. And this is the first time I've told this publicly. I did it to my Facebook group a few minutes ago, but the second time then. And that's the Present Like a Pro Facebook group, which you can join if you care to. The idea was in the context of how older people sometimes struggle with younger people in that they seem uppity or know-it-all-ish or too aggressive, or and this struggle has gone on generation after generation. Is never going to end. After the millennials, you got Generation Z and then Generation Alpha, right? It's never going to go away. And so the story draws from something that happened with me and my dad and my brothers a long, long time ago. My dad was a fantastic musician. That's where my brothers and I first learned to play. He was a fantastic trumpet player. And one day, I remember it being one day, but it probably is something my dad struggled with for a period of time. My dad, who had come up through the dance band era, where music was played, it was just music. There were no lyrics. There was maybe a quartet or a quintet, and they played dance music. And the dance music of the day, if you think about things like Harry James, Stan Kenton, Tommy Dorsey, a lot of those songs, they stood on their own merit without lyrics, without a lyricist. And then the big band singers started to come into play. People like Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, Helen O'Connell, all these people, right? And then music that didn't have lyrics seemed to almost disappear from the landscape because lyrics became so important. And this was just time marching on, right? This is one of the reasons why young people are smarter than older people. When time marches on, the young people are moving with the times, and the older people not so much. We moved with our time back in the day, if you think I'm old. That's how it works. So my dad, this one day, he comes to us, and my dad was a fantastic musician. My brothers and I all played. In fact, between us, we played 10 instruments, right? But my dad was really a good musician. We were hacks compared to my dad in the early days. And so my dad came to us one day and he said, hey, do you guys know this song by Stephen Bishop called On and On? And we all brightened because at that point, my dad's musicianship was separating from ours in some ways because my dad was old school and we were new school, right? We played in the 1970s, we were playing Summer of Love music and Beatles music and stuff like that. My dad hadn't even gotten into the Beatles yet. And the Beatles broke up in 1970, right? So that gap had kind of separated us in terms of the Venn diagram and what we could both appreciate. And so when my dad said, do you guys know that song by Stephen Bishop, On and On? We all brightened and like, oh my God, Dad's getting hip, you know? And we thought that he was just interested in our music all of a sudden. But the reason my dad wanted to know about the song On and On was he was getting ready to learn it and sing it in his old style band. And On was presenting a challenge to him for a reason that we now call syncopation. I didn't understand why my dad was struggling at the time, but I totally get it now. You see, in the early days, music was very basic. And if you had a beat, like you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And pop music came along, and then the accent was on 2 and 4, so it became 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, pop, boom, pop, boom, pop, boom, pop. It's like every pop song ever written for the most part. So this very basic boom, pop, boom, pop. Even my dad understood that. Fantastic musician, my dad. But On and On presented a different challenge to him because On and On is riddled with something called syncopation. Now, my dad knew how to play syncopation, but he didn't quite recognize it in the context of this contemporary music because there is so much syncopation in the song On and On. It's like almost everything in the song that's important happens off the beat, not on the beat. So again, basic music is boom, pop, boom, pop, boom, pop. And syncopation happens at the top of the beat like this. Well, bop, 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 right? So to have you appreciate what my dad was going through, he knows boom, pop, but he's really struggling with down in Jamaica, they got lots of pretty women, steal your money, then they break your heart. You see all that boom that up there. And he came to us and he said, can you teach me how to do this? And we were like, yeah, Dad, we can teach you. And it was so hard because he didn't have the sensibility. It took all afternoon, but he got it. I mean, to his credit, he wanted to learn because his band, his style music was becoming irrelevant in the marketplace. So he needed to be able to sing songs that were still in the top 40 charts, right? And he knew his sons could help him. And that's the story of how this works. Younger people teaching older people, and also how to create inspiration from ordinary narratives. That little story of my dad in the afternoon, it's not going to be a signature story until I can drop it into the context of the giggle that young generation gets from helping people in the older generation. And by the way, the feeling of that diminished feeling that an older person gets when they're being taught something by someone in the younger generation, the contempt that develops, right? And so when I tell you the story about the music lesson that we gave my dad, it's an interesting story, but it doesn't become super powerful until I drop it into the context of what was happening with music and the younger generation teaching the older generation something, a struggle that continues to this day. And that's how it works. So more speaking tips at the Present Like a Pro group in Facebook, and also more video on my YouTube channel. MichaelAngeloCaruso.com is the website, and I'll see you on the speaking circuit.